This is Mary Lewis at A Tiny Homestead, the podcast comprised entirely of conversations with homesteaders, cottage food producers, and crafters. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, or leave a comment. Thank you. Today I'm talking with Therese at Salonek Farms. Good morning, Therese.
Good morning, Mary.
How are you today?
Oh, we are doing great. We're doing great. This is fun. I'm so glad you invited me.
Yeah, I have all kinds of questions. Before I get into them, tell me about what you guys do.
Well, we farm in Montrose. I understand you're in Minnesota as well.
Yeah, in Lesour.
Lesour. Okay, so we're just about 45 minutes west of the cities, in at Montrose, Minnesota, and we raise beef. We have anywhere between 900 and 1,000 head of beef cattle here, and we've done. My husband grew up on a farm not far from here. I, however, was a city girl, and I go where he goes, right? And so we've been here at the farm since the early 90s. Mid 90s. And so we bought the farm from his parents. We milked cows for until, about the 2000 or so, 2001, and switched over to raising replacement heifers for dairy farmers, and then landed on beef. And for a variety of reasons, beef isn't as intense as milking cows. And so that's what we do. Our beef goes. We have a pretty robust private beef sales. We work with several processors in the area to sell privately to beef, and then we also sell obviously into the major beef markets. JBS in Wisconsin is where our cattle are shipped to. So yeah, that's what we do.
Okay. So is producing cattle or raising cattle for beef less intense than for dairy? Because if the milk gets contaminated, you lose all that milk and it costs you money. Is that part of it?
No, because that's a pretty rare occurrence. That's
Okay.
something that would happen. It's more dairy animals require every day, twice a day milking. Some people do 3 times a day. We never did. We did morning and night. And they also are a little bit more finicky as far as how you feed them and how you carry. Dairy cattle are hardier, or beef cattle are hardier than dairy, and so so that's kind of the difference between and actually, sadly, dairy farmers are not. They're dropping out. The small dairy farmers, that are milking 60 to 150 animals. They're few and far between because the milk prices vary so much, and that was part of the reason that we got out. Is our monthly income could vary, $15,000, and that was in the early 2000s, and that was it was frustrating to us because we didn't have that control, and so milk would go up, milk would go down, and it was just too frustrating. My husband loves farming. He loves livestock, and he's good at it, and he's done it his whole life. But you have to look at the economics of it, and that's why I think you see so many in the last 15 to 20 years, dairy farmers going out, and you're seeing the major 2,000, 3,000 cow dairies pop up, because that's really the only way I think you can survive. I'm sure there's people doing it, but for the most part, you're seeing all of that. All of those dairies just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's tragic. There's a lot of empty farmsteads around here where you see, obviously they had cattle probably for many, many years, and they went out of cattle. And so.
Okay. All right. I just didn't know why dairy was more intense than raising for meat, but thank you, because if I don't know, other people don't know either. I feel, okay, I'm going to say this is my opinion and my opinion only. I feel like farmers and teachers don't make nearly the money they should be making.
Well, with it's the control of, I always said to my husband, we would send a cow on a truck, right?
Mhm.
And then to be butchered, and then once it gets there, they tell you what they will give you for it. Well, it wasn't in their best interests to give you, if they didn't have to give you a high price. So the farmer was kind of like, okay, what are you going to give me for it? And they're not going to be able to take the cattle back, right? It's already been
Right,
set
yeah.
there. So it always kind of frustrated me. And I say to my husband, this was years ago, you guys should unite, because it just didn't, it never, who else puts their product out there and not knowing what they're going to get for it, and then just be stuck with whatever somebody deems it to be valued at. And but farmers are independent bunch, and
Yes.
tend to not want to collaborate, which always confused me as well. I thought, why don't you guys get together and have breakfast once a month and share your ideas so everybody can do well? All boats rise with the tide. And but farmers are, kings in their own kingdoms, and um, I probably get in trouble for saying that, but
Eh,
it's
it's
been my
okay.
experience that they, are independent, and that's probably what makes them, uh, you know, successful and satisfied with their jobs. And satisfied with what they do, because they do work incredibly hard, and you know don't always get the recognition they deserve, but it's a very fulfilling life, and I think that's probably what drives a lot of them.
Yeah, I think that anyone who appreciates the food that they get from their local growers should hug their local grower when they see them. It's it's a thankless job typically, and I try to thank everybody for anything they do for me, even if it's the tiniest thing, because I think that thanks is a really important word.
I also think, Mary, that in going forward,
Mhm.
people need to understand where agriculture is going, the demands being put on the farmers, regulatory, etc., and where prices are going to go. Beef prices. It's alarming to us as producers to see the futures, right? Because that's our bread and butter, right? So we follow that kind of stuff much more so than the average person, and the futures are pretty alarming for cost to consumers.
Yeah, tell me about that because I was reading your Facebook post about that. Tell me more about that.
Well, beef prices are rising. The country had a very significant drought, especially in cattle country across Texas, and a lot of those areas where, because of the drought, they didn't have the feed to feed their herds. A lot of them were on grass, right in the open uh, pasture, that type of thing. Well, when there's no rain, and no rain for a really long time, grass doesn't grow,
Mhm.
and it's not. It's cost prohibitive for them to. People say, well, then truck down hay or whatever. Well, when you have 1,000 animals out on a pasture, that's a lot of feed. It's cost prohibitive to
Mhm.
bring feed down from someplace that didn't have drought. Therefore, they had to sell off their herds because they couldn't feed them. Well, they not only they sold off the cows as well. Well, the cows are the ones that produce the next generation. So you
Yep.
see, chickens, you can turn around and grow a chicken in, I'm not a chicken farmer, but we've had chicks in, 55 days or 85 days or whatever it is, and you got a chicken that's ready to eat. Hogs are a little longer than that, but not nearly as long as it does the life cycle of bringing a steer to market. So that's why you're going to see beef prices rise, is that the cows were sent to butcher as well. So the next generation wasn't being born. And then you add into that, South America had significant drought as well. And so that affected, a lot of beef comes from South America. And that affected. So it was kind of a perfect storm in the last couple of years to, to reduce our beef herds. And then you look at some of the growing third world countries that are, their middle class is growing and they're demanding more and more beef, which you know, with exports. So there's just a lot of demand placed on beef and there's less beef around.
Okay. We had bought a half from a local butcher like a year and a half ago, and I was not in love with it. I think it was grass finished, and I really like grain finished because I'm old school. I like my beef to be grain finished because I think it tastes better. And so what I was going to ask you is how how does okay, I don't even know how to ask this correctly because I know nothing about raising beef. So I'm going to try. What is what's the difference between growing or raising or finishing grass fed versus finishing grain fed?
Well, I'm not an expert in grass fed, but from what I understand, grass fed it's leaner. It does have a
Hmm.
different taste, but they're also older because there's not the caloric intake that there is with corn. For instance, a beef steer, we can turn around in about 14 months to finishing weight. And I think grass fed is significantly longer than that, because they're fed a different grain. The corn fed or grain fed is a richer diet, and
Hmm.
so they grow, you know, faster.
Okay, then that might be why. Um, I'm not gonna say who we got the beef from because I'm sure that people love their beef. I just don't like it. I assume that if the animal is older, the meat will be tougher, and that's where I'm running into the issue. It tastes different to me, and it's really tough no matter how we cook it.
Yeah, to be honest, I've never had grass fed, and so I don't really know. I only know anecdotally what people say about it.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Okay.
but yes, that's a question many of our customers will ask. Is it grass? Some prefer the grass fed, and I'm not exactly sure why that is, but it's more expensive too.
Hmm.
Grass fed is more expensive, but it's personal like and dislike, I think. But for the most part, and also grass fed is a little tougher up here where we live, right? Because of winter,
Yes.
and we can't have them out on pasture. There's because yeah, people say, well, are they out on pasture? And well, that's a great idea for, spring and summer, but it's not such a great idea when it's 35 below zero.
No, no, because I mean, once they eat whatever is dried from what had been growing and died off, it's gone. So there's nothing for them to eat.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah. So you see primarily grain fed up in our region, I would venture to guess.
Okay. I've been trying to figure it out because I was so excited to buy a half and then ate the first steak from it and I was like, I don't like it and now we're stuck with a half steer of
Mhm.
this particular animal. Yay. Luckily my husband and my son think it's fine. They're not thrilled with it, but they think it's fine. So they have been eating a lot of it and every time they're like, "Do you want to do steaks or do you want to do burgers?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay." And I eat like 3 bites and I'm good. So it's been very frustrating and very disappointing for me. And honestly, we're probably going to hit you guys up for a half when we need to buy one again because I was looking at your website and I was like, I think we need to go see them. That'll work.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. At Salonek Farms, I run the private part of our farm, and we have about 1,200 private customers that we have serviced, and
Hmm.
we guarantee our beef. And if you don't like it, you can bring it back. We will give you your money back. We never ever want Salonik beef in a freezer that they don't want it in, but I can tell you that never happens.
Hmm.
But I make that really clear because integrity in our business is our highest priority. And we always seek to be more than fair, and uh, probably maybe sometimes I overdo it by making sure that our customers are happy. We're proud of what we do. We work hard every day to grow the best beef available. When we ship to Green Bay, we get, obviously, they send you what your steers get. We 35 steers fit in a semi.
Okay.
And then they grade them, and we come out at 95, 96% of those 35 animals come out at prime or top choice, and often a third of the herd will come in at 5-star reserve, which is the highest you can get. And so we're very proud of what we do. We save our best steers for our private customers. So we are very confident that people will be very pleased with our beef. And like I said, we guarantee their satisfaction. And that's just the way we want to do it. I never want anyone questioning our integrity.
Fantastic. I am absolutely going to talk to my husband about getting the next half from you guys because I really want to like the next steak that I eat out of the next half we buy. I really do. So,
Yeah.
you were saying that you were a city girl. So was this a hard transition for you or was it okay?
I think I wept
Yeah.
when I think back on it. I think I wept every day on the phone to my mother because being a city girl, I wasn't used to the dirt. I wasn't used to the smell, and I wasn't used to the the work ethic. Unfortunately, I'm not proud of that, but um, yeah. And so we moved to the farm uh, just after our firstborn. We have 7 children.
Hmm.
Just after our firstborn, and unfortunately, my husband fell off the roof the day we moved in, and broke his neck, and in several places, and that was not a good start. uh,
No.
we were milking at the time, and God really showed up, and he healed, and he was able to you know eventually get back into the barns. But so that's how we started it off. And
Ah,
I was feeding him in the living room with it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. But and we were poor as church mice too, and which is not very fun.
mm-mm.
And yeah, so I did. It took a lot of getting used to. I was used to a nicer home and that type of thing. But like I said, I go where he goes, and having a husband that's satisfied with his work and doing what he wants to do and doing what God's called him to do is has to be your highest priority. And we moved here. We made it ours. We, continued to grow our family. Um, and it's been a wonderful life. It's been a really wonderful life. One of the things my husband is really gifted in is young men that are struggling.
Mm.
Many of them are fatherless. Some are just kind of struggling in adolescence. Some are, parents are struggling with defiance and that type of thing. And so that's really his ministry here. And part of the reason he continues to farm, because we are in our, mid 60s,
Mm.
and is that it really provides him an opportunity to have these young men come out to the farm and to hopefully help them to become men, good men, for them to see what a good man is, and
Mhm.
to see the satisfaction of hard work, to spend that time talking to them about issues in their lives that maybe nobody talks to them about. And it's something that the farm provides that opportunity for him to teach them a honest day's work, to show them, put a wrench in their hand and show
Yeah.
them how that wrench works, and to give them some of those life skills that maybe because they have no father at home to show them that. Moms, God bless single moms, but there comes a time when a young man, an adolescent boy, I think needs a strong man to guide them and help them to make good decisions and that type of thing. So we have done a lot of that over the years and continue to do that. Whoever God brings into our lives, we uh, they're they're welcome here, and it's not always easy, and we don't make it easy on them, but they are loved and they are guided, and so that's
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Um, and I'm gonna jump the gender gap here a little bit. With girls and boys, or with boys and girls, I think that they all need to have really good role models of each gender besides mom and dad, because women learn from quote unquote adopted aunties and adopted grannies, just like boys learn from adopted uncles and adopted grandpas. And I tried really hard when I was raising my four kids to make sure that the people that we had in our lives who were adults taught the kids things that they knew that we didn't know, if
hmm
that makes sense.
hmm
So yeah, what your husband is doing is amazing. And it's really funny when men are a different animal. They they can't just sit down over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and be social and chat about things that are deep. I feel like if they're working on something, they just naturally start talking about things that mean something to them.
Yep, absolutely, side by side. And
Yeah.
I think these young men crave some guidance.
Mhm.
They know, some know that, the path that they're on isn't the best path for them. And it's not like you're in the army now. It's not boot camp, but they respond to that. I've said to my husband so many times, you can't talk to a girl like that.
Mhm.
And, because it is true, it is different. And, you want to have those positive role models in their lives. And especially for our girls, I don't know if you raised girls, but we have four of them, is to hopefully have them pray for them to choose good men, because that is their life, right? If
Mhm.
they make a bad choice, that is life altering for the rest of their lives. So our girls have chosen wonderful men that treat them well and love the Lord. And it's 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 heartbreaking for some of my friends to have their daughters in tough situations. So yeah, you're right. It's who you allow your children to spend that time with in their formative years really defines their values, and what they will accept and what they won't accept.
Yeah, I have a daughter. She is the oldest of four kids, and she managed to find herself a really good man.
Oh,
He adores her. He takes care of her to a fault, and she's also terribly independent. And so she'll call me and she'll be like, "Mom, I married the right guy." She said, "But he's almost too helpful." And I'm like, "That's okay. Just that's good. Just tell him that you appreciate him offering the help and that if you need it, you will ask." And she's like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Honey, trust me. It's better to have one that's too helpful than one that's not helpful at all."
exactly, exactly. And you watch your adult children, and they still need some parenting and some some guidance. And that's also a privilege as a mom. And really, for you, Mary, shows how well you raised her, that she trusts you as a friend to come to you and give you, you know, be open with you about struggles or whatever, because that's we still need to be there for our adult daughters, and they need that guidance sometimes.
Absolutely. And I feel like my kids are my friends to the point that sometimes they tell me things that I don't really need to know and I blush. And I'm like, "That's a little TMI, guys." And they're like,
Mhm.
"No, no, 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 it's not." I'm like, "No, trust me, it's a little TMI." But but I love that they feel like they can just open up to me and tell me stuff, and even if it makes me blush, it's still an honor that they are willing to do that. So, and then
Absolutely.
the and then the other three are boys, and again, men are a different animal. And I have I have had conversations with my sons that I never expected to have. As they're growing up when they're little and you're like, things I never thought I would say as a mom,
Mm.
like, no, no, you can't eat cat poop out of the cat box, things like that. Gross, terrible things that you never thought you'd say. It's now turned to things I never thought I would hear.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I have to laugh. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But they're all really, really good kids, and I am so proud of them and so glad that they're mine.
Yes, it's a blessing. It is. Yep, my kids too. They're not perfect. We have our moments. There's a good thing there's doors on the house sometimes, but
Uh-huh.
that's part of being a family. And when you have seven, um, anything could happen at any time. It generally does, especially on the farm.
Yeah, my theory has always been that one kid is one kid, but once you have more than one, it may as well be 100.
Yeah, and then we have others too. I mean, I can have 12 at my lunch table for sure in
Hmm.
the summertime. And I like that. And I like to cook and I like to provide a healthy meal for them because they're working hard. And so, there's just a lot of big personalities sometimes.
Uh-huh. Yes, all four of my kids have huge personalities to the point that sometimes it's hard to have them all in the same room. So I understand that. Um, okay, so do you guys do anything else besides raise beef? Do you garden? Do you have chickens? Do you do any of the other kind of homesteading things that farmers do?
We do. My mother never gardened, so I never really learned how to garden. I have a friend who is a gardener and also a canner and all this stuff. And I said, Sarah, we could have a garden out here at the farm. We certainly have enough, land to do that.
Mhm.
So we tilled up this great big piece of land out where we used to have horses, and we put in a garden last year, and it was more. We bit off more than we could chew. It was a great idea in the
Uh-huh.
spring, right? It's a great idea, and then you get to be late July, and it's like, what the heck have we done here? I froze a lot. I didn't know how to can, but I see Sarah's. Uh, she just has tons and tons and tons of stuff. So I'm going to do that. Freezing my tomatoes and all that, that takes a lot of room up in your freezer. And I think
Mhm.
canning. And honestly, I think some of the things going on in the world right now, it's not a bad idea to have extra things around and to, grow. It's satisfying, but it's also food security is important. I hate to be a conspiracy person, but I don't know. Sometimes in the morning I wake up and go, what could happen last night that will impact the world? And so I am going to start canning as well. And hopefully it goes well. And I don't know. It's such a homesteady thing to do that it's not really my thing, but I'm going to try it. And
It's it's not hard. I'm going to say this again. I've said it a couple times on the other episodes that are out. Canning is not hard. It's just a lot of steps, and you want to make sure you have the time to devote to it in one day.
yeah, once you start, you got to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's not hard. It's just many, many steps to make sure that it all gets done correctly so that you don't get botulism from something you eat 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So
Right.
you gotta follow the steps and you gotta be careful. But if you like it the first time you do it, you will be hooked for the rest of your life.
Well, you got to have the stuff for it. I don't have the stuff for it, so
Yeah.
I got to find the stuff for it, which you can get at garage sales or, estate
Oh yeah.
sales that grandma died and they've got all this stuff and the kids don't do it anyway. But so I got to keep an eye out for the stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what you mean about not wanting to be a conspiracy person because I don't want to be that either. But there are some mornings I wake up and I just have this feeling that something happened that I don't know about yet. And I'm almost afraid to turn on the news because so many strange things have happened just in the last 6 years. And we have always lived like something was going to happen where we couldn't get to the store to get milk. So when we shop, we always shop for at least 2 weeks worth of stuff in the house. And we can because we have a big garden and we always have surplus, and canning is better than sticking it in the freezer because in the freezer it just gets buried.
Hmm.
So and And if you have a shelf full of jars of jam and jelly and pickles and tomato sauce and diced tomatoes and whatever you're doing, it's so satisfying to go open that cabinet and see all those jars of food and be like, okay, we're good for a little while.
It's hard to imagine. It's hard to have imagined that we would have been thinking that, 5 or, 10 years ago that we should, I remember hearing about preppers and thinking, well, that's ridiculous. Why would anybody, what could, and now more and more, we're not alone in that, where people are, you know, you see commercials for 25 years of dehydrated food you can buy
Hmm.
on mainstream TV.
Yeah.
And so people are obviously, concerned about the possibility. And that's a tragic turn of events, I think, for the country, but one that possibly nothing would ever happen. But to even think that possibly something could happen is disturbing to me. But and we have the resources, right? And obviously out on the farm we'll always have what we need. It's the inner city, where Cub Foods is their only option. Well, Cub Foods could run out of in hours if there was a major, you know what I mean? There's a vulnerability that I feel for.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And part of the reason that we live outside of Lesour, Minnesota, is because we wanted to be able to grow a big garden and preserve that food for the winter because it's Minnesota. Things happen like blizzards and ice storms and situations where you can't necessarily get anywhere for 3 days.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
And hopefully you have power because we have waters here for 1,000. So that's where we are. Like we have generators and whatever, but the losing power is a big deal on the farm.
yeah, we have a generator that kicks in automatically, which is an absolute blessing. Like
Mm,
if the power goes out, we have power back within 10 minutes as long as there is fuel for the generator to run on. And
great.
it's so wonderful. It just anytime that every week the generator kicks on for like 15 minutes Tuesday night so that it runs during the year in case it keeps everything working. And every time it kicks on Tuesday night, I'm just like, generator's running. It still works. Yay.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it just calms me down because the idea of not having power and losing everything in our freezers and our refrigerator, and if the power isn't working, we don't have water because we're on a well.
Yep, we don't either.
So yeah, it was a there's a word. It was a bucket list thing that we wanted when we looked for this place. We wanted a generator that just would come on automatically. And
Mm.
our realtor, who's a friend, she was like, that's kind of a bigger ask. And I said, if the place doesn't have it, that's fine. But if it does, yay. And she's great. I'm going to be interviewing her in June, actually, because she's a realtor. She knows about the market and people who are looking to buy a place to start a homestead. She's going to be able to tell them things that they might not think of. So I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to interviewing her too. But she's great. She basically found us a place that had all the check boxes checked for us. And we love her to pieces. She's now a member of our family, basically.
Oh, that's very sweet. Good to know. Good for you.
she's she's lovely. Every time I get to spend time with her, she's so bubbly and she's so happy and so friendly. I'm just high for like 4 hours after she leaves.
Mm. Those kind of
So
friends are great, priceless.
it's really fun to visit with her. And I asked her if she wanted to be on the podcast, and she was like, absolutely. I'm like, okay, good. Let's do that. That'll be fun. So anyway, Therese, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And as soon as we need to replace our half beef that is getting whittled down, I will be messaging you because I want to try out your beef next time.
Well, we'd love to serve you in that area. So you just let us know. And it's been a really fun and to talk to you, Mary. You seem like somebody I probably would want to have coffee with. It's really a privilege to have been on your podcast. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Therese. Have a great day.
Bye bye.